All right. Now that we know how to install Git, we have it installed on our computer. Let's get going to see how we use it. I've got some slides for this. And the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to need to have a place to save our code. We could do Git stuff all locally on our computer. That's what I mean by locally. But if your computer crashes or dies, you need somewhere that it's backed up to. So we're going to use GitHub for that. So what we're going to do is I want you to go up to github.com. And once you've logged in to github.com, then come up to this top right corner, click New Repository, and we can call this My Git Repo. We can add a description, we can make it public or private, we can add a README, gitignore, license. I'm not going to go over these right now. You don't need them, but we can cover them in another video if you're interested or have questions. So I'm just going to create this repository. Just give it a name and create it. And then you'll see that I have a public Git repository under my account. And it gives you some instructions. We'll get to those in a second. So now that we've created a GitHub repo, let's create a local repository or a local repo. And we're going to be following these steps, actually. What's going to happen? Oh, I was working on something else. I have this empty folder called My Repo, and it's just a folder in my file system. You can go create a new folder and then click File, Open Folder in VS Code and go find that folder. You'll see though that there's nothing in it. So within here, what I want to do is I need to open a terminal, a command line, so that I can do some of these commands. So I'll go to Terminal, New Terminal, and then the first one I'll do is I'll type git init. And what that does, let me just show. In the command line, if you type ls-la, that will show you all the folders that are in my repo. And neither of these are actual folders, so you can ignore them. But if I do git init, you'll see that we initialized an empty Git repository in my repo /.git. So it actually made a folder called .git right there that will store and track all of my changes that I make to code or anything in that folder. So we did git init. We have a new Git repository. Now I'm going to go up to show what they did here. They're just creating a new file and adding this text in it. So I'm going to do it this way, where you click the Create File button, and I'll add index.html. And in this HTML file, I'll just make HTML tags. And you'll see over here, there's this one. If we click that, that's our source control, meaning GitHub. And it says there's a file named index.html that you haven't saved anywhere. And you made these changes to it. So what I need to do is I need to follow these steps that it says. You add the file, and then you commit the file, and then we'd have to push it to get it into GitHub. And let's make sure we're tracking with our slides here. We create this local repo with git init, and the order I'm going to go in, you see that they have this command. I'm going to do that command right now, actually. I'm going to say git remote add origin, and then you give the URL of your Git origin that you created in GitHub. So what that'll do is connect me to GitHub. And I'll say git remote add origin, and it actually gives us the URL here. I'll paste that. And what it does is it makes our local computer, it tells it where to send code to when we want to send code back and forth from GitHub. So it's going to send it to my Git repo. So we've connected our repos. Now we make the changes that I was just talking about. So we added a file. Now we need to do an add and a commit. So I'll say git add dot. And what the dot does is it adds all files. You can also specify the name after add if you want. So I added that and said, yes, I'm adding it to my staging area. And now I need to do a commit so that it gets saved to Git. So I'll do git commit -m first commit. And you could use whatever text you want in here. It's just a message for you to remember what this is about. So I'm going to press that. And now you'll see I don't have any changes in source control. But if we look in our command line and type git log, that will show us a list of commits that we've made. So there's this first commit that we just made on this date by this author. Now we have code that's in our local repository. In this example, there were 3 commits. We just did 1 commit. Now we want to get it into GitHub or the remote origin repo. So the way we do that is git push. And the first time you need to specify where it's going. So this -u says set origin main up here as my upstream branch that I always push to. So if we look at this, they've copied it, or they've written it down for us, so I'm just going to copy it and paste that in. And it says branch main is set up to track origin main. Now we're going to talk about branches later, but you can have different versions of your code in what are called branches. If you type git branch, you'll see what branches you have. Right now we just have a main branch, and it pushed it to GitHub's main branch. So if we refresh, we should see an index.html. And that's how you keep things in sync and back up your code to GitHub. If you want to make more changes, it's the same process. You come in here, say, I'm going to add a body tag with a paragraph that says hello world. And if we reveal that in my Finder and then double click it, it'll open my HTML file right there and show what changes I made. But you'll see that that's only in my local code. If I refresh this, click in here, it doesn't have any of that. So we need to go through the same process again where we add it, git add index.html, and then we commit it to save it to our local Git, added hello world, or add hello world. And then now that it is, if we type a git log, we see that we've committed it. We had our first commit, now we have our second commit. Now we can push it up to GitHub. So I'll do a git push. And since I did the -u origin main before, I don't have to do that again because it remembers where I'm trying to push to. So it got everything up to main. And if I refresh this, we've got it tracked right there. And that's how to use GitHub by yourself. It's a great way to track your repositories. It's a great way to make sure you're not losing code. It's always good to have a backup. And in the next video, we're going to go over how to use it with a team.